Hey guys, Crazy Science Dude here, and today we will be talking about Newton's laws of motion. Now the reason why we're going to talk about this is because his laws are so important that we still use them till this day. Now Isaac Newton lived in the 17th centuries, so the 1600s. So he made his laws in the 1600s. But 400 years later, his laws still apply today. That's how accurate they were, that we still use them today. So let me draw a quick sketch of Isaac Newton over here. Like a stick figure of him with his curly hair. So here is Isaac Newton over here. And he lived in the 1600s. So he is most famous. He's most famously known for gravity. And he came up with this equation: the force of gravity equals G times M1 times M2 divided by R squared. But this is not the point of the video. The point of the video is on Newton's laws of motion. So before we talk about Newton's laws of motion, let's talk about what is motion. Well, motion is just like things that are moving. If, say, we have a car over here. So this car, let's say it's moving. It's the car. We say that the car is in motion. And Newton's laws of motion govern how this car is going to move. So his laws are so accurate that we use his laws to get the first man, Neil Armstrong, to the moon. So here's like a rocket ship over here. So Newton over here, who lived in the 1600s, his laws were so accurate that we still use them today, and we use them to get the first man, Neil Armstrong, on the moon. So that just blows my mind at how talented this guy was. And his laws put the first man on the moon, and they were created in a time where people didn't even think going to the moon was possible. Yet here we are, using his laws to actually get us to the moon. So let's actually talk about his first law of motion. So Newton's first law of motion is the law of inertia. That's what people sometimes call it, the law of inertia. So Newton's first law is the law of inertia. And the law of inertia states that an object at rest will stay at rest unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it. And an object in motion will stay in motion unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it. So you may be like, well, that's a lot to take in. This is like a super long law, but actually it's just use logical reasoning so you can memorize this law. So I like to memorize his laws. Like I tell people, to memorize Newton's laws of motion, just imagine a toy car. So let's draw a toy car over here. So if we have a toy car over here, right? What is it doing right now, this car? What is this car doing? So imagine a toy car on a plane, right? Now what is this toy car doing? Well, it's doing nothing. It's not moving. It's not like changing color. It's doing nothing. So Newton's first law of motion says that this car over here, if it's doing nothing, if it is not in motion, it's not going to move at all. If it's not in motion, it's going to stay not in motion. So we could say that an object at rest will stay at rest. So this object is not in motion. So we say that object is in rest. So that an object at rest, which is not moving, will stay at rest. It makes sense, because if you have if your mom's car is parked up on your front lawn or whatever, it's not gonna start moving automatically. No, it's not gonna move. It's gonna stay at rest unless an unbalanced force is being acted on it. So what's an unbalanced force? Well, an unbalanced force is a force that causes an object to change its motion. So right now, for this car to move, there needs to be an unbalanced force. Let's say this is an unbalanced force. And this unbalanced force is needed to make this car start to accelerate or move. So remember, an unbalanced force, let me just write the definition over here. An unbalanced force. So an unbalanced force is a force that causes a change in motion. So this car is moving right now. So let's say this car is at rest. So it's not moving. So it's moving 0 miles per hour because it's not moving. So it's going to be 0 miles per hour. So in order to move this car, there must be an unbalanced force. So it's going to change the object's motion. So it's going to cause a change in motion. So if it's an unbalanced force being acted upon the car, it's going to change its motion from 0 miles per hour to, let's say, maybe 10 miles per hour, or 100 miles per hour, or 2,000 miles per hour. It doesn't matter. But this unbalanced force over here is going to change the object's motion. So that's the key idea about Newton's first law. This unbalanced force is going to change this object's motion. So an object at rest will stay at rest. A car that's not moving will continue to not move unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it. Unless there's something that's gonna cause a change in motion. So then the second half of Newton's laws of motion or the second half of his first law is that an object in motion will stay in motion unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it. So what that means is, let's say you actually get this car to move. Now this car is moving, right? So this car is moving. Now, so the second part of his law says that if this car is moving, it's going to continue to move forever unless there is an unbalanced force that is being acted upon it. Unless there is a greater force that's going to counteract the force of this car. So that's going to be an unbalanced force. And it's going to counteract the force that this car is exerting. So when this car is moving, right, it's exerting a force. And now it's exerting a force. So this unbalanced force is going to counteract the force of the car. So let's say the force of the car is 10 newtons. And the unbalanced force would have to be greater than 10 newtons in order to change the objects, in order to change the car's motion. So let's say it's 50 newtons. So that's going to cause a change in motion. Let's say that there's a force pushing this car back. Let's say the force is 6 newtons. So there's a force pushing at 6 newtons. So that's going to cause a change in motion. And so this is going to be an unbalanced force because it's causing a change in motion. So now it's going to cause this car to slow down a bit. It's going to cause it to slow down because since these forces are acting in opposite directions, they're going to slow each other down. So we're going to do 10 minus 6, that is 4. So this car will now be moving with a force of 4 newtons. Because this unbalanced force is trying to counteract this force of 10 newtons. So think of it like this is positive and this is the negative. Like, you can think about it like that. And the negative wants to cancel out the positive. So this 6 newtons is gonna take away 6 newtons from the 10 newtons. So that's gonna be 10 minus 6, which is 4. So the car's gonna be moving with a force of 4 newtons now. So that unbalanced force is gonna cause a change in motion. So let's go back to this law of motion. An object in motion will stay in motion unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it. So I like to, like, if I see something that's very confusing, right? Like, it's just confusing to me, and I don't understand it, I try to annotate it. Now, it's annotating. It's when you take something that's complex and you make it more simple, so it's more reasonable. So that's what I'm gonna do with this over here. So if you don't understand it, if you don't understand this law still, don't worry. I'm gonna make it a bit more simple. So an object at rest will stay at rest. That's just basically saying that an object that is not moving will continue to not move. And this chunk over here, unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it. This chunk is saying that an object that's not moving will continue to not move. So if you have a car, or like this Apple Pen over here, it's not moving, right? And it's gonna continue to not move unless I exert an unbalanced force to make it start to move. And that unbalanced force is coming from my hand, causing it to move. So an unbalanced force is just a force that causes a change in motion. This is not moving at all, now it's moving. There's a change in motion. This part over here is saying that an object in motion will stay in motion. So if this Apple Pen over here, if it's moving, it's going to move forever. But watch, it stops. So the reason why it stops, or let's say it stops like that, is because there's something called friction, right? And this friction over here acts as the unbalanced force. It's causing a change in motion, and this friction will build up and will cause this Apple Pen to stop moving. So now when I push this, it stops moving because of an unbalanced force. This unbalanced force causes a change in motion. So this is moving, now it's not moving. That's an unbalanced force. So it's going to cause a change in motion. So it's moving and not moving. There's a change in motion. This unbalanced force is called, specifically, like I can't say that word today. But specifically, it's this unbalanced force right now that's causing this to stop moving is friction. So yeah, that's Newton's first law of motion, the law of inertia. So we're not done. Well, a conclusion will be an object that is not moving will continue to not move. This Apple Pen, it's not moving. It's not going to start moving spontaneously. If it's not moving, it's going to continue to not move unless there is a force that's going to cause a change in motion, which is me pushing this. And after that, it is moving. It's going to continue to move forever unless there's a force causing a change in motion. So the force causing this Apple Pen to stop right now is friction. So that's the unbalanced force, the force that causes the change in motion. So yeah, that's Newton's first law. Now, you're probably wondering, which I hope you're wondering, what is inertia? Like, what's inertia? Like, what's that all about? So inertia is the tendency for an object to resist a change in motion. And we'll be doing a whole new video on inertia later, to explain it more in depth. But like, imagine you have a big boulder. This big boulder is gonna be hard to push because once it resists the change in motion, if this big boulder is starting to move, it's gonna be hard to stop it because it wants to resist a change in motion. So yeah, that is Newton's first law of motion. An object at rest will stay at rest unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it, and an object in motion will stay in motion unless an unbalanced force is being acted upon it. So this is the end of our video of Newton's first law of motion, the law of inertia. And I am Crazy Science Dude. I am 12 years old and I am in 7th grade. Peace out. We'll see you on the next video.